So we're back with another Perils in Paradise card review. Today we got a rather cheesy reveal from Clark Hellscream. This is Gorgonzormu. This is the second card named after Gorgonzola cheese in Hearthstone. It is a 3-mana 3/3 dragon. Battle cry, you get a 2-cost cheese that summons 3 1-cost minions, and then it upgrades each turn. You can see there the delicious cheese. Apparently it's so tasty that the minions come running to eat the cheese. Classic storytelling here in the cards. This is some prime Warcraft lore, don't you know? That's a 2-mana spell though. It summons 3 1-cost minions, upgrades each turn. So this is something you're gonna want to get in hand early, and then upgrade it turn after turn after turn, you know, all the way up to like 10 mana. Clearly a 2-mana spell that summons 3 random 10-cost minions is absolutely nuts. But I will say that it doesn't have to be 10-cost minions to be nuts. I actually think, even if you look at that card at a base level, a 2-cost spell that just gets you 3 bodies on board, sometimes in a pinch, that's not a disaster. Like, some 1-drops have occasional upsides here and there. You know, you get a 2/2, you get a 1/3. Like, that's a solid little board to build off of if you just need some tempo or you're desperate to get some bodies in play. And I think it really quickly becomes a very interesting card. So 2 drops, pretty good. 3 drops, it's like, man, this is already a big old pile of stats. As you get into that 4, 5, 6 cost range, your average expected results are going to be pretty nice, and you sometimes just get some great keywords along the way. You know, you get the occasional rush minion, taunts minions, just you know, some legendaries to do something really cool. And it doesn't take long for that to snowball into something really powerful. So ideally, right, you're playing your Gorgonzormu on turn 3. It's a bit of a downturn. You're not excited to play a 3-mana 3/3 these days, but it's not a disaster. You still get a body down, and then you're setting up for later. And I think sometimes just playing this on turn 4, it's going to upgrade into 2 drops on turn 4. 3 2-drops on turn 4, that's pretty solid. Play that alongside another 2-cost card or something. That's not bad. Some decks will be happy to do that. Many other instances, you might want to save this like for turn 5, turn 6, getting it into that nice range where the bodies are pretty solid, and then you're still playing it alongside another card, maybe something reactive. Deal with the opponent's card, summon a nice little board of 3 or 4 drops. That's going to be solid, particularly for any deck that has the luxury of going a little bit later into a game. If they're looking for mid-range turns or late game turns, they can sit on this cheese, farm it up a little bit, and then use it as a great tool. If you think about Reno decks in particular, many of those have mid-range to late game sort of game plans. And sitting on the cheese for 4 or 5 turns while it scales up is not going to be difficult for those decks. They have other things to do in the meantime. Then you get into a late game turn, you like play a board clear or something, you use your cheese to follow up behind it. You know, you deal with the opponent's board, and you still get something really nice and swinging of your own, a problem for the opponent to answer. And all you had to do is really just, you know, weave in this 3-cost card earlier in the game, which isn't a challenge necessarily for decks like that have enough sort of survivability or reach into the mid or late game to pull that off. So Reno decks actually seem like a pretty cool fit for this. There are also some very like specific synergies for Gorgonzormu that I want to talk about before we get into the kind of downside of this card, which I guess I'll just say is top decking this late in a game. That's going to be a bigger problem. So really exciting to play on turn 3. Less exciting to play on turn 9 if you top deck this, right? Suddenly the 1-drops on turn 9 aren't feeling quite as interesting. So we'll get to that a little more. But you know, we just saw in Paladin Sunsapper Lanessa was revealed for Paladin. This makes your 2-cost spells cast twice, which for the delicious cheese, that's a 2-cost spell. Gorgonzormu into Sunsapper Lanessa. You could have a turn 7 play where you're going to be summoning a bunch of stuff. So I guess the cheese is added to hand on 3. So on turn 4, it's 2 drops. Turn 5, it's 3 drops. Turn 6, it's 4 drops. And turn 7, you could play it alongside Sunsapper Lanessa to get 6 5-drops, because it's going to summon 3 of them twice off of your Lanessa. Like, that's a pretty monster board. 6 5-drops on turn 7. There's some spicy stuff there. I also think another angle for this card is actually Zarimi Dragon Priest. Since this is a dragon, it's a really natural fit in Zarimi, and sometimes with that Zarimi, you need to build that board the same time you play Zarimi, so that in that second turn, you can whack your opponent for a ton of damage. Card like Delicious Cheese gives you a way to get potentially a bunch of stats in a really low cost play. So, you know, even on turn 7, you could slam a Zarimi and a delicious cheese and get a pretty big board. Maybe even later, you kind of use it as almost a 2-card combo. Things haven't really come together. You've been sitting on the Zarimi in hand, but your cheese is just scaling turn after turn after turn. Finally, you know, turn 8 or 9 or something, you're going to get to like a pile of 6s or 7s or 8s alongside your Zarimi, and then use that to kill the opponent on that that extra turn. So that's another angle for this that might be interesting. And I think it's important for cards like this to have a few like specific decks and synergies that make sense, but I also think this card is intriguing, like we talked about, in some of those mid-range packages or control decks that can go deeper. I just need kind of efficient plays, particularly Reno decks where you're just looking to get 30 good cards. Something like this seems to make a ton of sense for me. Now, the big elephant in the room, right, is this card might be insane on turn 3, but does the downside of drawing it late hurt it too much? Because definitely you draw this, you know, after turn 8, turn 9, turn 10, whatever, late in a game, it's gonna fizzle. It's gonna feel pretty bad. You're gonna basically spend 5 mana for a 3/3 and 3 1-cost minions if you try to do it, you know, all at once. It doesn't really help to wait probably too long because most games just don't stretch endlessly. So, you know, you don't expect this being particularly useful or big in those late game scenarios. It's just kind of a weak play. But I do maintain that the upside is so high early. I think a lot of decks would be fine to kind of sustain that downside. They have plenty of other things to do in many cases. Sometimes it's just about stealing those wins off those big high roll plays, and this does sometimes create those. So I think it's probably still pretty solid despite that risk of hitting it late. It's not, you know, totally dead unplayable. It's just weak. But on turn 3, moving into that mid game, this could be a pretty interesting option. So for me, I think Gorgon Zormu actually looks like a pretty solid card. And this is going to be a quick review indeed. Gorgon Zormu is a 4-star card. And there you go. That's it for this one. We only got 1 card today. I don't like doing these short reviews, but that's all we got. So I guess stay tuned. I think we're going to have a day off and then come back on the 20th. Looks like we got a few different reveals there on the 20th. So hopefully some more cards that time around. But yeah, let me know if you think Gorgon Zormu is going to be worth it. Is there any other fun ways to use some cheese synergies and so on to make this card even more exciting? I don't know. I think there's definitely some potential here. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, game on.